The air, water, earth, and sun awes us. The four awesome forces of nature can provide 1,000 times more energy than we need. You are also awesome. You and me and all Earthkind are the fifth element. We are literally changing the world. Technology is now harnessing nature's awesome power for electricity, heat, and transportation. And the best news is that the clean energy transition can save us money and create a more prosperous, just, beautiful, and sustainable civilization today. Welcome, sir. If you would, let people know who you are, where are you, and what kind of work do you do?
Good morning, it's Danny Kennedy. I am the CEO of New Energy Nexus, and we support diverse entrepreneurs around the world to drive innovation and build equity into the global clean energy economy as she rises. So that's what I do as a day job, supporting startups all around the world. I'm currently in Sydney, Australia, for reasons that are mostly personal, but it's also a really interesting market in Australia for the penetration of renewables and distributed renewables in particular in the cities of Australia, learning a lot from Energy Lab and some of the incubators and associations here. And then also working with our teams in Asia, which is on the same time zone. But normally I'm based in California, where we run the California Clean Energy Fund, amongst other things.
Great. Danny, some reason there's something going on with the soundtrack, though. It got distorted, and I'm not sure where it happened, but yeah,
Start
unfortunately,
again.
yeah,
Okay.
let's do that again if we could, because some reason it was like, I don't know if it was feedback or whatever, but you're on, everything's coming through your headset, right? So it shouldn't have been, it just was reverberating, so I don't know.
It went wrong. Okay, I'm going to do different attempt. I'm going to sit down and contradict myself.
Oh, so sorry. I know you like to stand up, so.
Is that too bright for you? It is.
No, actually, it's okay. It's all right there right now. So.
Okay.
There we
This
go.
might be good. All right.
Good?
Was that too long-winded an answer? Do you
No,
like
no,
them short?
it was fine. It was fine.
Okay.
It got like, I mean, almost like there was like it was almost like a metallic kind of distortion from, and hopefully it's not the connection. Hopefully it was just maybe the position. I don't know what it was. So I can't tell you. All I could tell you is I could hear it, and if I could hear it, then that's not a good sign, because that's a bad thing. So okay, we'll roll it again from
Sorry
the top.
about that, Ron.
No worries, sir. Take your time. I'm good. Are you good on time, or you have a time constraint?
Yeah,
okay, no, me too. So I got as much time as we need. So we'll do it right. Great, wonderful. All right, and usually, just so you know, I usually do an intro. I'll record the intro later and do some background stuff on you. Just so this is the part where we just get into the actual interview, and that's why I just say, "Who are you? Where do you live? Where do you work? And what do you do?"
Okay. I am Danny Kennedy. I'm the CEO of New Energy Nexus. We support diverse entrepreneurs around the world to drive innovation and build equity into the global clean energy economy as it rises. So I'm actually speaking to you from Sydney, Australia, where I'm sort of exploring some of the startups and the scene here with this country that's going quickly to renewables, and also here for personal reasons. But I'm normally in California, where we run the Cal Seed Fund and the California Test Bed Initiative with the University of California, all of which is to support startups to succeed and get more clean energy going sooner.
Outstanding. And we'd like to start with why. So why did you get into clean energy, Danny?
Look, my why is a long story that is back to my teenage in the last century, the 20th century. Have been an environmentally minded activist and entrepreneur for a long time. Started a solar company in 2007, been involved with a bunch of other startups personally and privately. And clean energy is the answer we need on Earth for the climate crisis that we face. We simply need to expand rapidly the adoption of these technologies that we have to displace fossil fuels, because they're cooking the planet with climate change. but also it's the biggest opportunity space of our time, Ron. It's like this amazing uplift potential for communities everywhere, for job creation, for wealth creation, for leadership opportunities for people that have historically been left out by the conventional economy. So it's just this wonderful combination of things that, you know, it's solving for the big crisis facing us at the same time as creating prosperity and opportunity. And so clean energy is just a great place to be, a growth industry, and bringing good news and solutions to communities everywhere.
Outstanding. I'd like to ask if you have we call them a quantum quote, an inspirational quote that kind of helps shifts people's minds or frames the conversation. You have anything you'd like to share?
A quantum quote. I mean, you know, quantum to me sounds like size and scale, and you know, one of the things I think we don't realize is that we've got a more than 4x the rate of deployment of clean energy technologies on Earth that we're currently seeing. And, you know, we're seeing an incredible boom, right? You know, look at the stock market and all the measures we fall back to, the Tesla fortunes over the last year compared to the conventional internal combustion engine car companies. The massive solar deployment in China, you know, last year that outpaced coal for the first time, solar and wind, that is, you know, 23 gigawatts of solar just in the month of December in China, whereas the US installed about 20 gigawatts in the whole year. So, you know, it sounds like we're racing at an incredible pace globally already, but it was about $500 billion last year in 2020 invested in clean energy. We need to be doing a couple of $1 trillion annually of clean energy deployment, installation, innovation, this whole economy, in order to get to 1.5 degrees to stay alive, to meet the Paris Agreement, if you will. It's a much bigger exercise of economic deployment. We've got a 4x. So that's my quantum thought. It's not a very snappy quote to inspire your audience, but hopefully it's a scale of effort and imagination that will appeal to them.
A quadrupling of activity is what we need and where we're headed, eh?
Thank you. That's the quantum quote.
There we go. Outstanding. So what type of clean energy activities do you do? What kind of technologies and, you know, what are the goals of New Energy Nexus?
Well, great question. It's a bit of a pick your poison. I sometimes feel like sort of a snake oil salesman, you know, wandering around with a jacket and saying, which watch do you want? You know, because, you know, do you want energy access? We have a fantastic program in Uganda that is providing solar home systems and solar lighting options to replace kerosene lamps, better cook stoves, energy efficient water filters, even as an example, because what they do to purify water is boil it by burning wood, and you know, we can displace that with simple technologies. So, you know, we're running micro enterprises doing that with microfinance, you know, in communities that live on $2 a day per person. And then at the other end of the scale, we've got, you know, the California Test Bed Initiative with the University of California, supporting entrepreneurs that are verifying prototypes in the most arcane, you know, new chemistries for battery storage, or wildly cool like wind blade technologies that are biomimicking mantis prawn claws to work out how to make wind blades stronger and longer so we can get more wind power out of each turbine. And then everything in between. We've got companies doing energy efficiency in the Empire State, in the built environment of New York. We've got companies in China doing hydrogen production from surplus solar and wind power that's being produced there. So yeah, it really is a case of we're across the breadth and depth of the clean energy economy as it rises, and our craft, like what we do in that work, is support the entrepreneurs, the founders of these companies, the teams, train them, get them through the valleys of death, give them some capital when we can, whether it's equity or debt or grant funding. We have a range of different programs in 10 countries around the world, and you know, it's a fairly full plate, but a lot of fun and really important work that you can sort of learn about at newenergynexus.com and get involved with there.
Outstanding. So many folks have a kind of, it was a moment in time where you were grappling with something and all of a sudden you got this big, aha, that's it. Was there a particular aha moment that came to you, and would you care to share?
For me, yeah, I think that my Eureka moment, we call that as an entrepreneur's journey, the sort of goal is to go from Eureka to exit. You have the aha and then you turn it into a company and productize it and then deliver it to customers and scale it and serve it up. And at some point you sell that on or to the IPO or whatever the goal is in your corporate strategy. But my first aha of note that caused me to jump ship from a previous career to start my own company was when Google Earth had first come out. You might remember sort of circa 2006, you could sort of look at the world from these satellite images that they were stitching together. And it was, wow, that's amazing. And I knew a lot about the kind of cottage industry of the solar companies that was around then. I'd worked with them on a policy and advocacy basis. And the big cost structure in going solar back in the turn of the century was took a contractor a truck roll to go out to someone's house, get on the roof, get a tape measure out, get a protractor, take some measurements, go back to base, draft up a CAD drawing or an engineer's diagram for what a solar array might look like on the roof, go back to the house, sit at the kitchen table, explain it to the customer, and whatever the percentage yield of that sort of sales process was means that you're doing multiple truck rolls for one sale. And the biggest piece of the cost was still the solar panels back in 2006, but it was also very high customer acquisition costs. And so my aha with a mate was sitting around drinking beer, honestly, here in Australia, saying, seeing this Google Earth thing, isn't it cool? Wonder if we could do the design and engineering phase of that sales process online. And, sure enough, we worked out how you could. We found a software guru that did all the maths and whatever trigonometry was required. And then we bundled it into an online commerce platform. This is circa 2006, as I say. So it was sort of as the online internet-based sales commerce was happening. And we became the pioneer of fully digital online solar sales in America and around the world. And that, has become ubiquitous. Most solar contractors, that's how they do it, right? And it makes sense. And it's even automatic now. There's robots scrolling the rooftops of the world, making, plans for solar arrays to take advantage of that space. But that was our aha. And it was a pretty empowering, game-changing disruption in the solar sales industry.
Yeah, it really was. Was that with Sungevity or?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
And that company's carried on. It's had difficult straits in the US, but I left in 2015, and in 2017 the European business was sold to NG, the big French utility, and is now the largest solar provider in parts of Europe, and is going great. And then, as I say, everyone has adopted remote solar design as what we call the tool, because it just makes sense. And isn't that wonderful? Like, we've made it easier to go solar and reduce that cost. And meanwhile, the hardware guys did their job and they scaled manufacturing and dropped the cost by 80% over the same decade, in terms of modules and inverters and all the pieces and parts of the solar array. So we've squeezed the cost from, $10 a watt to, here in Australia, it's $1 a watt to install a solar project. In the States, it's still too expensive for other reasons, but it's just been dynamic how that industry has grown.
Yeah, it's amazing, and definitely you were in the groundbreaking beginnings of the remote analysis, which was absolutely critical to driving down the cost. So fantastic.
Yeah.
So, what other challenges did you come across? And what have you learned, and what are you doing differently now than what you used to do?
Look, as an entrepreneur, and I've since helped start several companies ranging from solar finance businesses like Mosaic to a microgrid company in Kenya, a solar as a service business in the Pacific. I think one of the challenges that people underestimate is just the emotional churn and the solar coaster, we call it, the roller coaster ride of, you know, fantastic, enthusiastic days of success, making your first sale, making your 10th sale, making your 100th sale, breaking even one month, all that sort of highs, and then crushing lows, having your first rejection, having your 10th rejection, having your 100th rejection for the day, going broke in your bank account and mortgaging your house and doing the mad things that entrepreneurs do to stay alive. It's just a very up and down experience. And I think one of the challenges that people have to get real about if they're going to do it is it's not easy, and you got to really gird yourself for the long haul. And to be a success, as some founder of some company joked, takes 10 years of hard work, and then overnight you'll become one, sort of thing. So that's a big challenge, just preparing for the long haul and being ready for that roller coaster ride. I think the other things that I do differently these days, Ron, is sort of a focus. I treat our business at New Energy Nexus, where we start up startups effectively as a craft. And we just have to be ruthless about our objectives and the companies we're seeking to support, and not get distracted by the policy conversations or by the media opportunities or by other things that kind of go with the incubation and acceleration game. There's a lot of froth and bubble right now with Biden coming in the States, and the sort of Green Deal in Europe, and all this sort of recognition that our time is now. The world is going through an energy transition. It is going to happen that we get off fossil fuels sooner or later. But what we've got to do is just stick with our knitting and stay on target and stay focused. And then the last thing I'll offer is the idea that, the ball is always in your court. One of the things I've learned is not to wait for others, but, to take it up. And if they haven't called you back, to call them back, and, just take the next step yourself. Because if we stand around waiting, the company you want to start won't go. The energy transition we want to have happen won't happen as fast as we need it to. The climate crisis will continue unsolved unless we get going and just take the initiative on our part.
Great. Hey, I'm going to stop this just for 2 seconds. Is there someone moving stuff around, pouring stuff? Is the background noise that I'm hearing just coming through the internet, or?
I think maybe it's an airplane, or maybe
No,
someone.
it was more like, it was almost like somebody in back of somewhere was pouring things into a container or something. It's okay. It comes and goes. So I just wanted to see if there was anything we could do about it. If not, this is such a great interview. I don't want to have distracting noises interfere
Yeah,
with the quality. Okay. Nope. Nothing that you can
I
see.
didn't
That's
notice
fine.
it.
Yeah. Okay,
Sorry.
good. So that's good. No
Yeah.
worries. All right. Great. We're going to go back to where we were. All right. Set. Here we go. So many people have gone through what, as you said, there's always ups and downs in the solar coaster, but sometimes in our lowest point, we find a particular kind of an aha, but it actually is something that grows out of that worst energy moment, that worst moment. Would you share yours potentially, and what you learned from it and how it changed your life? Because a lot of times it winds up taking us on a different path than we ever thought. So.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because I think you're right. It's sort of in the depths that you get tested, and you find your true grit, if you will. And certainly, there were moments where we were running right up against it on payroll back in the teens. Fast growing solar company stretching itself, and anxious nights lying awake worrying about the people, the team that we built, and all that sort of stuff. And I think in those moments, where you realize it can always get worse, actually, as low as you feel in the pit of that turn on the coaster, it could come off the tracks, if you will. And so steeling yourself for that and working a way out and up is sort of the thing that I found, I think, in those depths. And by which I mean, I think that point I made about focus and taking initiative. You can't be complacent. You can't ever take your eyes off the prize, and you just always have to stay focused on your goals and your business, and doing the next thing and the next thing. And it's many days of work that make a great week and month, and it's many weeks and months of great work and hard work that make for a successful year in a business and a career and in your professional life. I don't know whether that helps, but I think it's sort of, it's a little stoic, to be honest. Like when you face the dark, you sort of come out deciding to get on with it and just do the work that's needed rather than get distracted by other things. And, I think that's one of the challenges in the climate crisis. There's a lot of lesser goals that we could get taken away by. We need to deploy solar and storage and wind at scale to displace fossil fuels. We need to electrify everything. That's the work we have to do in the world. And, we could get caught up in all sorts of fancy conversations about other things. So we're very interested. I mean, it's not to say there's not critical innovation around the edges of that. But we really need to support startups that are doing that work. In the United States, we've addressed maybe 3 million roofs in 80 million total addressable market. What are we doing to build those businesses? How are we going to do that work now?
And do you think, in terms of the States, just for the moment, there are particular trends that you see that are promising and hopeful on that end? Community solar?
Yes. Absolutely. I think, there's initiatives in states that make me excited, various ways of valuing solar for the grids. I also think just the zeitgeist with Biden coming in is positive. There's an understanding that jobs and economic uplift coming out of COVID is paired with and part and parcel of a clean energy agenda. It's not either or separate initiatives. It's both and. The way we rebuild America's greatness in manufacturing is this path of renewable electrification of everything, including autos and transport systems. And that agenda is going to create a middle class again and jobs for Americans. That's understood, I believe, by the new administration. And there's a whole of government approach to achieve it. Whether or not they can, that's the challenge. Execution is everything. Back to a theme of this conversation. But, proof will be in the pudding, whether they can pull it off or whether they get distracted by the politics.
And I guess our proof in the pudding will be whether or not we as a civilization survive, or whether we let ourselves get distracted and think that there's something more important than our children's future, right? So,
yeah.
All right. So would you have one, we call them a supernova value proposition, one unique tip, tool, tactic that you think most people need to know, but probably don't?
Most people being the average punter or the entrepreneur that I work with on a daily?
Either or, there, Danny, up to you, man.
Look, the ones that, in the general listenership, I would say just, be aware that the world is changing much more rapidly than I think we realize in terms of the commanding heights of the economy. Electricity is being transformed as we speak. Texas in the last weeks, is just an example, tip of the iceberg of the massive disruption that weather will create, but also new technology will create. And I actually think we'll end the decade far more advanced than we actually think, just as we did in the last decade. Solar became the biggest new additions to the grid in the 2010 period. Over the next decade, it won't just become much, much bigger than everything else with storage and wind as well, but it will become such that we produce more electricity than we can imagine we need. We'll produce 3, 4, 5x our current peak demand. And that's because that's the cheapest optimized way to do electricity with renewables. And so, the investment opportunity, the jobs and career opportunities for young people, the fate of nations, electro states versus petro states, geopolitics of fossil fuels and why we went to war in the Middle East, all these things will change in the course of this coming decade. And so that's what my advice for your average listener might be. And for the entrepreneur, it's like, pick your path in that amazing opportunity statement and find a niche, because that niche is going to become very big and a very big opportunity. And just, daily get up and execute against that opportunity, do the work, balls in your court, stay focused, my friend, and you'll do fine.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. All right. We like to enter now what we call the Pulsar Round, where we ask you a series of questions and look for your short, succinct, amazing, and mind-blowing answers. Danny, are you ready?
I hope so.
Great. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oof, so much there. I'm sorry for the pause. I hope you edit that because too many choices, but probably to marry my now wife.
Good answer, Danny. Good answer. Those of
I
us
hope
who
she
are
sees
married,
this.
we all appreciate that answer, Danny, as do our second wives or however much further along we are. So excellent answer. Excellent answer. All right. How about if you share one of the personal habits that contributes to your success, sir?
I am a big early riser. I believe that getting up and going hard is a good way to get things done.
Are you early to bed and early to rise?
When I can be, because I need the sleep, but regardless, I try to start at 5 and go from there.
All right. So early to bed or early to rise, no matter what, but early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise is something you strive to live by, but don't necessarily get enough sleep at night for. Is that about
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
about right.
Yeah. Okay. An internet resource that you'd like to share that you think are good for people in general.
We run a Slack community, not to be overly self-promotional, but the New Energy Nexus Network, we call it. It's an open space, no charge to get involved. And if you're kind of into clean energy, entrepreneurship, and financial innovation, there's, I think, about 3,000 people in there. And, it's just a very rich space to go, learn, share, look for jobs, talk to people. It's that very interactive feel that Slack can create. And I would highly recommend it to a lot of listeners if they want to get involved in the industry that is clean energy. You can join it through our website at newenergynexus.com.
Outstanding. All right. A book you'd recommend to awesome Earthkind people and why?
The book I would recommend for your listeners is Humankind by Rutger Bregman, I believe is his name. I don't know if you know this one. It's an amazing book published last year, 2020, I believe. He's the Dutch sort of economist historian who became somewhat famous for taking out Tucker Carlson on Fox and also standing up at Davos and telling a bunch of billionaires that they had to pay their taxes. And that was the simple best path to sort of an equitable, sustainable future. But he does this wonderful book in Humankind that proves that we are a more collaborative species than we think we are. We've been fed this kind of narrative that we're a highly competitivist species almost from, the DNA up. And actually he shows that, our instincts are highly collaborative and social and not as competitivist as we sometimes think. And even things like, the sort of bystander apathy thing that New Yorkers remember from that case back in the day of a woman that was murdered or raped, and people stood around supposedly, and the news media reported that New Yorkers didn't care. He disproves that in chapter and verse really well. Another great one is The Lord of the Flies. He sort of debunks that little boys left on an island would go after each other like that, and instead shows that when there were marooned cases of little boys left on islands, they collaborated to survive. So anyway, it's this wonderful read that I would recommend to everyone. Humankind by Rutger Bregman. It's I think subtitled A Hopeful History.
Excellent, outstanding. Yeah, I mean, the reality is that I think when you take a look, it's always when we come together, we can achieve great things. And when we strive to continue to denigrate each other, the path is just downhill from there. So great, Humankind. That sounds excellent. I remember the gentleman and the things that he said and done. So thank you very much. That's outstanding. All right, Danny, if you had a magic wand and you could change it, if you can wave it and change one thing for everybody in the world, what would it be?
Social media. I would get them off the drip of dopamine responsiveness and let them get information at a high level and utilize technology that is wonderful, that allows us to share across borders and instantaneously and all that good stuff without the advertising addiction that has actually created so much distress and depression and despoiled our democracies and all the rest of it.
So would you get rid of social media? Is that what you just said? I'm just trying to clarify.
No, I think I would take away the business model that causes it to be commercial and about, addicting people to crap and causing clickbait to be the model that is how the information flows and the ideas are generated. I don't know exactly what the answer is. It's not outside my field, but if I had a magic wand on Earth in the 2020s as we go into this decisive decade on the climate emergency, I think that distraction factor from the focus, from the potential of collaboration, and when we all get together and do good things, whereas social media seems to be driving us apart, I would address that somehow.
Yeah, very fascinating, and a conversation in depth for another day, because it's very deep and needs to be addressed. And I believe in The Social Dilemma. There was a movie from the guys who started up the social media piece, who had only good intentions, but found that, yeah, the business model that's there just encourages more and more tribalism, and is not bringing us together, is just actually creating more divisions, which is not a good thing. So your point is
Right.
very well taken. Not sure the answer, and definitely beyond my capability as well, but very, very, very profound insight there, sir. Thank you. All right. WTF or F? This is weather time fudge, an extreme weather event, and tell the tale of having lived through it, or weather time fun, the most fun you've ever had, and the type of weather it was.
Huh. Uh, I'm an Australian Californian, so fire season comes to mind just in the last couple of years. I mean, having seen it on both sides of the Pacific, it's kind of tragic as a WTF. I also worked in the Pacific in the 2000 era, and there was a cyclone, Heta, it was called, in 2004, I recall, that swept through some small islands like Niue, which no one even knows where that is, but it's 1,000 miles north of New Zealand. And it was sort of 150% wind speeds and of anything previously recorded, and a huge storm surge, and just this frightening force of nature that we've supercharged, regardless of what you think of the climate science and how causal it all is. We are clearly adding heat to the system and creating these extreme weather events. So unfortunately, I've seen some pretty drastic damaging things already, and worry that that will only accelerate. The one reality is we've seen those curves go faster, harder than we wanted in terms of weather changing. The only curves that are going faster, harder than we projected are the uptake of renewables. Actually, 20 years ago, we didn't think China would be producing the sort of terawatt of wind and solar that it looks like it'll produce in the next 5-year plan. That didn't seem possible in the 2020s, but now it's entirely achievable. So, there's this race of rates on Earth that are going fast and hard, weather extremes being one of them, and clean energy adoption being the other that I watch closely. Not an answer to your question, Ron, but just amusing about those things, and hopefully we win out the race of rates that brings clean energy to scale in the time required.
Yeah, Danny, you're absolutely right. And the reality is that as we fuel these more frequent and extreme weather events, we're all experiencing them. And if I could just ask you to share one experience that you've had, we're working to let everybody understand that they're not alone in this, and that the reality is we're all experiencing them, whether we're one side of the world or the other, in this part of the country or another, whether it's wildfires or floods or droughts or hurricanes or tornadoes or whatever else. So we have some pretty interesting tales that folks have told. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing one of the ones that you've lived through and what it was like for you personally, if you care. If you don't want to, that's okay.
Oh, look, I mean, that's sort of my day job. Is I help connect people across borders to collaborate and innovate. And so, we've brought a Malaysian boiler company to New York. Whoa, sorry, I just bumped my headset here. We've brought a Malaysian boiler company to New York to help improve the built environment decarbonization of building stock in Manhattan. We took Californian companies to Chengdu, China, in Sichuan province, that are doing industrial clean energy technologies that are needed in that heart of China, heavy industry home. So I have like a litany of those stories, and you know, think that is the wonderful work that we get to do. We're much better off, to your point earlier on about collaboration and coming together around these issues. That's how we're going to beat them, is a massive war-like effort, but not war between us, but us against the big external threat, which is this climate crisis, and collaborating to defeat it. And that's what's going to win the day. So not a single anecdote, but just a general observation that is the path, and let's do more of that. And if, you know, the one case I will point to is in New York, the Clean Fight, 9 cool companies, some from New York, some from outside, addressing the built environment there in New York. Check it out, cleanfight.com, thecleanfight.com.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. What's the one thing you're most energized about today, Dan? Sorry, Danny.
I am most energized about the opportunity in Indonesia. I know that sounds obscure, but you know, think about that huge country, which is about the size of the United States in population, and you know, has had almost no solar to date, literally zero. And like Vietnam a couple of years ago, which had no solar till then, it will go through this rapid adoption curve that we've seen in the States and China and India and elsewhere. Vietnam did 7 gigawatts last year. They had no idea they could even do that. But, you know, they've basically canned a bunch of coal plants because they realized it's cheaper, better, and faster to build renewables, so solar in particular. And Indonesia, to go back to your question, is about to pop. They're about to do the first 50 megawatts on Bali. Another 200 megawatts in Java, we think, is coming this year. And once the genie's out of the bottle, it's just not going to stop. And I'm very excited about that opportunity. And the entrepreneurs there are very creative. It's a young country, fast growing, aspirational, you know, looking for all the things you and I take for granted in terms of electricity service and mobility and all the rest of it. And that's going to be clean and electrified. So yeah, that's what floats my boat right now.
Outstanding. So what's next for you? What's your next steps?
We are, you know, carrying on the work of trying to electrify climate innovation for everyone. We have a pretty potent mission and plenty of work to do. Got 80 team members around the world in 10 places, running accelerators, incubators, funds, grants, equity, debt, all sorts of stuff to support startups to succeed. My very next step is to talk to some investors about opportunities in Southeast Asia and try and get them to put some money to work there. You know, one of the challenges is often a lack of familiarity with these markets and sort of not technology risk anymore. Like everyone knows, you know, renewables are cheaper and better and a better bet, but getting comfortable with the emerging market risk or the countries that they aren't familiar with is sometimes a challenge. So trying to educate investors on the opportunity around the world is a big part of the job, but it's a fun gig and I'm very happy for it.
Outstanding. All right, grand finale, if you would share a piece of parting advice and the best way that people can contact you if you'd like them to.
Look, I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but my parting advice is the same as I said before. You know, get involved. This is this economic opportunity. It's also the most important work we can do ever in history, you know, and I say that without hyperbole. This decade decides the fate of civilization in some regards. I'm not a doomsayer. Don't believe it's the end of the world. I think we have a world without end here, but a millennium from now, we will look back at the start of the 21st century as humans and say, what the hell were they doing? Or thank God they did that. Thank God they did that yeoman's work and the lift that they undertook to displace fossil fuels, to rewire America and the world, and to get onto this clean energy pathway that we're upon and get down the track faster, sooner, better. So get involved. How can you do that? Like I said, newenergynexus.com, sign up for our newsletter, get involved in our Slack community. And for me personally, please follow me on Twitter at Danny K's Fun, or reach out through the info at New Energy Nexus, and I'll get to the outreach as soon as I can.
Outstanding. Anything we missed that you wanted to say or cover, Danny?
No, I think that was great. I hope it was for you. I was a little bit disjointed on the answers, but I think that was fun.
This is great, man.
I'm glad you do it.
No, I'm glad too. And little by little, I'm getting there. I just launched in August, but I have a mission. I have a path forward, and it's going to be more of a marathon than a sprint for sure, I
Yeah,
guess. But that's okay. It's like everything else in life. It takes time to do well and do right. But really appreciate your time. This was really insightful. Um, I was trying to get you to talk about a personal story of, yeah, I
right.
was in this hurricane and the winds were blowing. I had this one gentleman was talking about, he was on a sailboat with he was on a ship with his wife, and the ship was going up and down, and just it was massive, just this extreme weather event. So I was trying to get you to say an extreme weather event that you personally experienced. I had last week. I had Nicole Lederer from the Environmental Entrepreneurs. Do you know
Yeah,
Nicole from
yeah, yeah.
E2? Right. So she was talking about how the day that she'll never forget was when there was no sun, no
The orange
sun.
sky in San Francisco. Yeah,
That was it,
yeah,
so I mean, just tremendously touching, heartbreaking, just, I mean, it was like, wow,
yeah, yeah.
so anyway, I was trying to get you to go one of those, Danny. You got one, or you really don't have one? It's okay, it
I
doesn't
really
matter.
don't have one. I've been
Okay,
blessed and avoided those incidents
that's
by
great, man, you're
luck
lucky.
of travel. Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah, you're lucky, man. I had one myself, so
What
it
was
was.
that?
Oh yeah, so so 1988, 1998. I'm at this lake with my then wife and three kids. My had
Uh-huh.
married at one, had two, and it was a weird day. It was just a strange day, but it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. I was out in the sailboat, my father-in-law's sailboat, and at first there's no wind, and then all of a sudden the wind comes up and it's like demonic, and I'm holding onto the sail, and then the wind would stop, boom, just stop, and it'd be dead, and I'd be sitting there like falling asleep, and then we'd come up again. And I didn't think anything above it until my two sons left. They drove home. My one son was in college, and about 45 minutes or so later, my then wife and I and my daughter drove, and all of a sudden we come down this hill, and there's this wall of clouds, literally from the ground straight up as far as you can see, and it was like, wow, that's so weird. And then the wind started coming, and the hail started coming, and as we're listening to the radio, we find out there's a tornado that had
Oh my
been
God.
coming through. And try to grow up my hill, as we drive up the hill, which is a long hill to my house, they had taken down the tornado had taken down the high tension power lines. Couldn't get up for 2.5 hours in the rain and the hail and the storm. I was trying to get around so I could get to my sons, because my sons, God knows where they were. I had no idea. It was going crazy.
Wow.
Finally, we come back. They cleared the lines. We get through. My sons were okay, but the tornado had come down, and $50,000 damage to my house, wiped out 21 50-foot tall pine trees, just twisted them into twigs, took my barn. I found pieces of it half a mile away. But
Wow.
this gazing ball, one of those crystal, those little like Christmas balls that are just, you
Yeah,
put
yeah.
on a gazing, it just knocked over and didn't do any damage to it. It was like so weird how concentrated and focused this thing was. So anyway, that was my story. And since then, I became very cognizant that when the weather is cloudy, sunny, cloudy, sunny, windy, calm, time to watch out, because somewhere around there's a microstorm that's brewing. There's a tornado about to happen or is happening, and those shifts in weather, those extreme weather events, are becoming more frequent all the time. And we're getting used to them. I mean, that's the funniest part, is that we're getting used to them. In New York, we get
Yeah.
tornadoes every
Normalizing
year.
it.
Yeah, it's like strange. I got pictures of the Statue of Liberty with a tornado in back of it. I mean, it's just, and people don't even think too much about it anymore. So,
I
so
know.
anyway, the issue is just this part of the show is just to try to get people thinking about, oh yeah, I lived through Superstorm Sandy. Oh yeah, I lived through this flood. Oh yeah, I lived through the
Yeah.
drought. I lived through the
Yeah.
firefly. Just anyway, just to get people thinking that, yeah, it is happening more often. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, as I say, weird weather that's the rate of change that is frightening the hell out of me.
yeah,
It-
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, what scares the hell out of me is the methane deposits under that ice.
mm.
That's you got any solutions for that one, man?
Not as such. No, that's a big one. The methane
Yeah,
hydrate. Yeah.
yeah, right. It's like, psh. So anyway, we were in a race, and the great news, I thought one of your quotes that we're definitely going to pop out is the rate of change of clean energy adoption is twice as fast as the rate of extreme weather event increases. So something like that. I forget exactly how you put it, but I thought it
Brilliant.
was
Yeah.
brilliant. So I loved it. It
Good.
was fantastic. Anything else, sir?
No. That's awesome. Thank you for doing it. I'm really interested in the podcasting experience. You seem to be doing a great job. And like you say, it's probably a marathon, but good on you for taking it on.
Thanks for joining us today, awesome people. At awesomeearthkind.com, you'll find tips and resources on how to reduce your energy costs and have a positive environmental impact. You can also enter our monthly sweepstakes for a high-efficiency LED light fixture. If you're interested in becoming an Earthkind Energy Consulting Partner, go to awesomeearthkind.com/earn. When you refer us to a commercial building and they decide to go clean and save green with Earthkind Energy's consulting services, your referral will save money and you will earn finder's fees worth thousands of dollars. If you're interested in starting your own clean energy consulting business, sign up to be notified of the Clean Energy Business Partner that we're launching in May. This intensive program will provide you with the tools you need to start your own clean energy consulting business in the fast-growing $7 trillion clean energy sector. Today's podcast was co-sponsored by New Energy Nexus. New Energy Nexus strives to create an abundant world with a 100% clean energy economy for 100% of the population in the shortest time possible. The future of clean energy is 100% for the 100%. Become part of the solution by going to newenergynexus.com. Remember, you are an awesome force of nature and can make a real difference. Take your next step to create the clean energy future we all want and our children need and deserve. Until next time, take care, be well, and energize!